So Amanda, when and how are we going on? Do you know? So, oh, yeah, here.
And I'm going to put my phone in the room.
Okay. Let me see.
I'm going to let them know how to do this.
So all these things you can go on even if you don't do Facebook.
No, you have to be on
You have
Facebook.
to be on?
Yeah, in order to access it through Facebook Live.
I watched the thing from, I'm sure I bypassed it because I'm not on Facebook. I watched it.
It might have been put on YouTube or something.
No, I watched it on, at the time it was given as a Warren one. Was that done some other way?
I did probably so.
No, it's Facebook Live also.
I've been on. And I've never.
Well, that's good, but I don't know how.
It was, that's what it was.
There
I
was
thought
a
it
place
was,
that said not now. It was to join or something, and then there was a place that said not now, and I
Okay.
pressed not now, and I got on.
Well, I'm live.
I am my phone's going to be.
Okay.
So we're the two.
Yeah. But we're recording this, right? I mean, we can.
I would love to do that.
Doesn't this get archived so that we can look at it later? Because I told somebody to do that. It does?
Yes, when it's Facebook Live, it's
Good answer.
Are we going to say like action, cut, go, action, let's go? Yeah, you know, I will be here being the disruptive one as usual.
Karen, I wouldn't expect anything less from you.
Kick it under and then I can bring it up. Amanda, is there any place I need to stand?
Anywhere.
Okay,
That's half a body.
okay. Blinded by the light. I see the light. I see the light. Yeah, okay, this is better. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our AADC Smart Talks on student loans and how to pay off your debt. This afternoon's presentation is going to be presented by Ms. Maddie Brooks of the Prudential Insurance Company of America. She's been there since 2012, and Maddie is a stellar representative because in 2014 she was one of the top 10 sophomores in the Eastern Territory. And she also won the Life Concierge Award and several Masters Council citations. So we're really delighted to have Maddie here this afternoon. And Maddie has brought added value to the presentation. She's brought Ms. Sonia Lewis, who is the CEO of the Student Loan Doctor, LLC. She's an author and speaker and has started this organization as a result of the need that is out there. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the introductions. I want us to get directly to the program because there's a lot of information that you need to know on how to get out of debt. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to say kudos to all of you for spending your Saturday afternoon here and not out shopping or doing something else that you could be doing with your time. I think this next hour or so will be a good hour spent because this student loan epidemic, as I'd like to call it, is spinning out of control, and I'm sure Sonia will concur. So hopefully today, before you leave this room, you'll have some ideas and information as to how to get a handle on the student loan debt as well as pay it down and off. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, okay, so Amanda's going to help me with the slides because I am technically challenged, as my son will attest to. But that's okay, that's all right. So let's get started. Okay, so the first piece of information I'd like to share with you, we're going to take a little walk down history and see how and why we are where we are today as it pertains to student loan debt. 7 out of 8 college students graduate with some type of student loan debt, okay? In 1995, the average was $11,491. That ballooned to a whopping $35,000 in 2015. This is a nationwide statistic. Sonia and I are going to first help you identify what types of loans that you have, because sometimes that happens. You go to college and you have so many different loans that by the time you graduate, it's very hard to decipher what you have and what are your options as far as paying them off. Amanda? We're going to focus on the Eastern Territory because that's where we are. The average loan is $35,000 again. And not only that, graduate school loans are also escalating at an alarming note. Those are running on average about $115,000. That's up a good $9,000 since 2014. So again, these are things that we need to address. Amanda, you can just skip right over that. Okay. This statistic really blew me away. $1 trillion in student loan debt, okay? Credit cards are, and I need to refer to my notes for this because I was trying to forget it. It was so alarming. Credit cards. Now you would think those would be the ones that would really be high, right? Because that's what most people have. The credit card debt is $882 million, as opposed to the student loans at $1 trillion with a T. Car loans are $750 million. Okay? That's a little alarming. This is where people usually come and see me because I'm a financial advisor. So 56% of millennials are delaying buying a house, buying cars, planning for retirement, because they're stifled with all of this debt. So at a time in your lives where you should be celebrating the fact that now you have a degree, right? That's why we all go to school, so we can get a degree and hopefully find the dream job or the dream career. People come to me and the question is not how can I save for retirement, but Maddie, how do I pay off this debt? And that literally breaks my heart, because if you put this much time and energy into your craft, your trait, you should be able to walk away and begin saving for the next stage of your life, which will eventually be retirement. Amanda? And I went a little there. So, what types of loans do you have? I think if you click the button, we're going to. What are your repayment options? Okay? And lastly, what strategies can Sonia and I help you with to pay off this debt? That's what my expert, Sonia Lewis, is going to help us with. Sonia, I turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Maddie.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Always, my favorite joke is I do not represent Charlie May. All right, so I'll go through these, and because the information can be a bit thick, if you have questions, is it okay that they stop
Absolutely, please
through the
interact.
presentation,
Please.
so that we are not lost as we go through it? All right, can we get it next? All right, so the first thing first is, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, depending on when you went to school, especially undergrad, and even into grad, if you have a federal loan or a private loan. And so the difference is that there's a big difference between the two, and they show up differently when it comes to repayment. So the federal loan, let's start there. So that was funded by the federal government, right? And so that's usually the first loan that everyone signs up for. It's eligible to take out, not a lot of hoops to go through, your federal loan. There's a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. So subsidized, if you ever see that on your report. Now I want to give you a tool to look at your loan. So the website is NSL. This is going to be for federal. NSL, so Nancy, Sally, Larry, dog Sally. So nslds.ed.gov. If there was ever a federal loan to exist, it would live here on this website. If you have another loan but you do not see it on this website, then you probably have what's called a private loan. So anything federal, Perkins, Parent Plus, everything's going to live on NSLDS. Is that clear? So that'll allow you to see what loans are subsidized, what loans are unsubsidized. So the subsidized loan basically refers to the government has paid a portion of the interest rate for you. And even to today, let's say we had in this area a weather-related disaster. So for example, when Houston had the flood, they were eligible for a deferment on their subsidized loans, which means the government had took over and said, okay, we'll take over and pay on this interest for you. So it is a good thing if you have a subsidized loan, you're paying less interest. Does that make sense? So then an unsubsidized loan from the very beginning is accruing interest. So unsubsidized means it's accruing full interest, and subsidized means the government is agreeing to pay part of it. Are we clear on the two? Mm-hmm. All right. And so some people say, well, you know what, let's just put it all together. But it's important that whenever you do a consolidation, we'll get to that, they still, even in the consolidation, keep them subsidized and unsubsidized just for the very things that we've talked about, because things may come up where things could happen with you personally or within our country. They keep them separate. And this is how the government determines at what interest rate to charge or not charge. Does that make sense? Okay. So the federal loans, when it comes to repayment, there are some flexible options. So right now there's about 9 repayment options available, okay? Now when we give this presentation as of today, somebody could watch this a month from now, it could change and it will change. So right now all of the existing plans are still from the Obama administration. The new plans will change per the Trump administration the next few months. They were supposed to change last year, but then we had a lot of things happen within our country, and the agenda had got pushed back. Personally, that was a win in my world. So the new plans that are being proposed, they're not horrible. They're just a little tighter. There may not be 9 plans available from what I'm reading that he's proposing. There may be only 5. What do you think that could mean if there goes from 9 to 5? What could that mean?
Harder to get. Harder to get.
Well, no, these are repayment options. It's not harder to get, but you're on the right track.
I'm just working on the word proposed. I don't know if any of it will go through. I'm hoping.
Well, it's going to go now. We just have to see to what extent they'll go through, but they're going to change. But the difference from 9 to 5 is flexibility. So then we see that word up here where it says flexible, may not be as flexible. Fast forward, what does that really mean? So if you have loans and you're going to be in repayment, it might mean a difference in your budget. Does that make sense? So right now, I think the lowest plan you're eligible for with income-based repayment is what's called a 10% discretionary income. Okay, so let me just be really honest to say the word discretionary income, I've looked, I've searched, I've called. There's really not a clear definition on the word discretionary income. In the government's eyes, it should be that you would pay your loans, housing, and then a car. But we know most people do car, housing, loan. Does that make sense? So it's the income they would suppose you to have prior to house and car and other bills. Does that make sense? But 10% is still not a bad number. It's actually really affordable for a lot of people. Well, the new plan that's proposed is going to go from 10 to 12.5. Does that make sense? Again, not too life-changing, but it could be the difference of $50 to $75 per month, which could make an impact in your budget. So that's the type of information you want to be aware of as they release the new plans pretty soon. So in any case, right now there's some options. So you could technically, let's say you're like, you know what, I'm in forbearance right now and I want to start paying my loans tomorrow. Well, if you enroll into it, you'll be in the program for the year. Because every year when you're in an income-based repayment, so we're going to write this down, there's 2 types of repayments. The first one is non-income-based repayment, and the second one is income-based repayment. So there are about 4 non-income-based repayment plans and about 5 income-based repayment. Now you may not be eligible for all 4 or 5. It's going to depend. Everybody in this room is going to have different type of loans, different type of amounts owed, different scenarios. but it's going to be an option for you to choose between the two. So now in non-income based repayment means what? They're not looking at your income. Yep. So that's good. That's good in some cases for some people. Now, this is where it gets tricky. It's good when you owe less. When you start to owe a little over $50,000, it's not so good because most of these plans are set to expire within a 10 or 20-year repayment period. Especially a lot of them are set for 10. So that means if you have 50, 60 or plus loans, they want that to be paid off in 10 years. That makes sense? So you have to see if what's flexible to your budget. So this is not a one size fit all. So you have to make sure it's good for you. The more you have in student loans, and then if you consolidate, which we'll get to, there are going to be other plans, the latter of the two of the four, that are available to you to say, you know what, I might need 30 years to pay this off. So someone might need 30 years depending on how much they owe. Now the other one, income-based repayment, is what we're discussing. So the theory is right now, this is all still very tentative. Instead of there being like the 5 income-based plans that we just discussed, that there's 5, it might go down to just 1 or 2 with the new changes. Does that make sense? So the difference with those is that some are set at a 10% repayment, 15% repayment, and some are set at a 20% repayment. So if you're going to write this plan down, you might want to look into this. It's called Repay. So this is the plan that came out about 2 years ago that all Americans that have student loans can fall under at the lowest possible rate of repayment, depending on your income. It's called Repay. REPAYE. So if you're a recent college graduate, you can be eligible for something called PAYE, P-A-Y-E. And then, so what happened to be, it's very funny when it happened. When PAYE came out, people that had loans from way before, like, so I can't get a 10% repayment? So the administration literally months later had to come out with Repay. And that was like a good day when that Repay came out. Now, some people still don't know about the plan and are in what's called an IBR plan, income-based repayment. So that's like the standard income-based repayment that everyone knows about. That's 15% repayment. But if you need it to be more affordable, you can look at Repay. Are we on the same page? Parent Plus loans. So that might be applicable to someone in here. If you have Parent Plus loans, there's only one income-based repayment plan you're eligible for, or you might want to give this information to a parent, and that's called the Income Contingent Plan. So income contingent, that's 20% of your discretionary income. Okay, so what will that look like for some people? So income contingent is a little higher per month. And if you have Parent Plus loans, you have the option of putting those particular loans into the ICR plan. And let's say your loans, if you're still a parent with paying off your loans, into a separate plan. You have to be careful because a lot of people may think, and we can't untangle it. If you consolidate them, like let's say you have a Parent Plus loan, and you have your loans, you're like, you know, I want to consolidate and get one payment. That's the thought. But that actually might mess you up. Because if your other loans were eligible for a more affordable plan, like the Repay we just discussed, by consolidating, you now are only eligible for the ICR plan. Does that make sense?
Could you say more about the Parent Plus one?
Sure. So, so if you are a parent, and let's say you borrowed federal loans on behalf of your child to help your child pay for school. So that's called the Parent Plus loan. The Parent Plus loan is eligible for the non-income-based repayment, and the one income-based repayment plan called Income Contingent Repayment, ICR. And that plan is set at the highest bracket, a 20% repayment. So if you are a parent that has helped your child, and let's say you still have loans, you don't want to consolidate the two and put them together. We want to keep them separate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the question I have is, are you saying that if we consolidate all those different kinds of loans, that the one that is the least beneficial to us, they'll all turn into?
Well, they don't all turn into a good question. They would turn into a direct consolidated plus. So it would change the nature of the consolidated loan.
Okay.
So there's a direct consolidated loan, that's standard consolidation, but because you have that Parent Plus that you put into the equation, it would change it to a direct consolidated plus, which has different terms of repayment and a different interest rate, a higher interest rate, different plans that are eligible. it's the bane of my existence. So,
So you'll lose the benefits of the other lower ones?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's correct, that's
Mhm.
correct.
Thank you.
And a lot of people don't understand that or realize that because they think, sorry, it's
Mhm.
they think that if they bundle
Mhm.
a loan, it's always a good thing. And based on what Sonia just shared with us, it's not. Because any benefits, any positive benefits that you had when the loans were separate,
Mhm.
they go away.
Mhm.
And also the interest rate. So let's say you had a 3.5 interest rate on a loan, right? And you bundle it with a 6.7 interest
Mhm.
rate. When you bundle those loans together, they don't separate them out.
Mhm.
So now let's say your new rate is 5%. Well, you're gonna pay 5% on all of the loans that are within that plan.
So
Okay?
the only benefit for consolidating is just the convenience of making one payment to one place?
Well, not the only benefit, one of the major benefits.
Thank you.
And then, when we get to the slide about the forgiveness programs,
It's
so
coming up.
per the administration, different administrations will offer different incentives, like the public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness.
Yeah, that one.
Amanda.
But in order to have that type of loan, a forgiveness, then you have to be in what's called currently the direct loans program. Well, a lot of loans people may have are going to be in what's called an FFEL program if you borrowed a while ago, or you might have a Stafford loan program. So that's why it's really important to go to NSLDS to see what type of loans do I have. Do I have FFEL? Do I have Stafford? If you have anything other than direct, you may have to consolidate if you would like the benefits of public service loan forgiveness, for example.
Mhm.
Yep, so good question. All right, so let's see, we are here, direct, so I was, yep, then we can go through slides, we're going there. We talked about these, so we'll pause here. So when we talked about the different type of repayment plans, standard, graduated, and extended are under the non-income based repayments, okay? The income-driven repayment plan, and there's a few others that will list, that starts the income-based repayment plans. So the extended, you will find yourself in that if you have over 30,000, and some of the plans do require that you have consolidated your loans to get into that plan. Because that plan says, hey, we're gonna be together for a while, about 30 years. And then from there, yep. Okay. So we'll pause here. So this is just exactly what I said. So pay, repay, IVR, and ICR. If anyone wants to take a picture of that slide, you can. Or I know this will be replayed.
It's in your booklet.
It's in your booklet? Okay, great. Okay, it's in the booklet. Alright, so let's go through this. This is a good example. So let's say you have 40,000 in loans, the poverty level set at $11,880. So what's going to happen most times is when they're looking to see if you're eligible for an IVR plan, and you're looking to see which plan might be best. So E would be, you see where it says 10% discretionary income, that will refer to the repay plan. The challenge here, when you're looking at the IVR plans from year to year, because this could look a little overwhelming, it's going to go by how much you've earned that year, your adjusted gross income, and how many people you support. So the more people you support in your household, and I get this question a lot, but what if they're not on my taxes? It's okay, if they're not on your taxes, but they live in your house, 50% of the care comes from you in the house, then you can count that person as a part of your household size. Does that make sense? Because we get a lot of times with that question when people go to college and come back, they count. They have to come somewhere home. So they count. Yep. We can keep going. Alright, so the consolidated loans. So pretty much with this, it's going to most times give you a lower monthly payment. Again, it could be up to 30 years depending on how much you owe. It does reset what I call the forbearance clock. So everyone that usually comes to see us probably has played the game with forbearance. And it goes something like, you know, I just need about 3 more months to pay my loans. You know, I just need about 6 months. I'm about to move. So you just keep extending. So every loan has what's called 36 months of general forbearance, okay? That's the no questions asked, I need to extend this payment, 36 months. Well, one day you're going to call, this happens to you, you'll think about this. They'll say, you don't actually have any more months of general forbearance. is there any documentation you could provide of some hardship or that you lost your job, or it depends on the story you gave that day, right? This is no judgment zone. So if you have to give paperwork, that's when you start going into other areas of different type of forbearances and different type of deferments. But most people, not to be funny, don't have any paperwork. And so they stop here. So the general forbearance is 36 months. When you consolidate, you get your 36 months back. So you get a new set of 36 months. I tell people I hope you live to be 90 or 100, and I don't want you to have your loans that long. But you need to account for, you really want to use your forbearance months for the months that are going to be super important, things that are going to really matter, things that are going to come up that are beyond your control. Again, if you were to be laid off and you had proof of that, there is a deferment for that. That's called an economic deferment. So that wouldn't touch your forbearance months. That's okay. But there might just be some things that maybe you had an unexpected roof bill. I'm making that up, okay? They don't want that paperwork. So that would be a forbearance month. So it's going to be how you use your months if you had to delay your repayment. It's going to be reset when you do a consolidation. So once you consolidate, they send you a slew of letters throughout the process as it's being done, you cannot unconsolidate. That's important. No, I just want my loans to go bad. They were actually going to be a four. Well, that was really good and all, but there's no such thing. It's literally like taking money from one bank to the next bank. They bundled all of your loans together, they gave them over to whichever lender you've chosen. Now, what's really important to know here, because I'm in this website every day, is that there were about maybe 4 or 5 lenders that were originally able to be used. Now it's expanded to 8 or 9. So the good news is, there is a little bit of good news in that, every lender can be a little bit more flexible and different in some areas than the other. I know which ones are my favorite, but I don't get paid to endorse them. So I just know which ones I would prefer people to work with. There are some lenders I do not prefer people to work with. So if you're coming by way of us, I would get you out of there. And the reason is because the Obama administration had passed a law that said if you're going to service our federal loans, you have to hand in, it's kind of sort of like a customer service report. So anytime this particular lender or a lender gets a complaint, they have to document that and how they resolved it. Well, with the new administration, they got rid of that. So that is a little scary because there was at least a little bit of accountability, if you will. And so the challenge with that is that most people will say to us, I just didn't get a letter. Like, I didn't even know I was supposed to start repaying. I believe you because they service so many people. It could be possible you did not get something. So if you have loans, it really is, this is probably like the one debt I would say, different than the car note, different than the credit card, where you got to really be on top of your stuff. You got to know about your information. You might need to actually know more than the person you're talking to on the phone so that you can direct the conversation the proper way. Because a lot of people say, well, I called, I just didn't get the help I wanted. Newsflash, they could have just started yesterday. That's possible. The high turnover rate. You will know more than you. So you do need to know about your loans and your information because the parameters have changed in which person could be protected. Does that make sense? Okay. Just give me a little behind the scenes. I'm such a little, cuckoo about this information, obviously. Because it does affect, at the end of the day, if we just hit fast forward, it affects your bottom dollar. And when Maddie gets back to the presentation, how do you save? How do you invest? Well, if you can't get on top of this payment, then it will stifle legacy, if that makes sense. All right, let's continue. All right, so my favorite part. So everyone calls us, we get about maybe 3 calls, 4 calls a day. It goes, so how do I just get all my loans forgiven? I don't want to pay this back at all.
Exactly.
I'm like, I would not be open if this was possible. I'd sell it for $1 million if I knew. So, public service loan forgiveness, it is real. No, you do not have to pay $1,000 to enroll. Hang up if they call or text. It's getting really crafty these days. And because this is really an unregulated field when it comes to debt collection, so you might know that this is something you need to really work on. So when you get that call for $1,000, I can make it all go away. Let's just put a little logic behind it. So you owe $60 for $1,000, it could go away. That's probably not realistic, but that's okay. And so a lot of people, not to be funny, they actually do succumb to the $1,000 call. So I've talked to a lot of people who paid $1,000. I'm like, that's actually like 2 payments. So you want to be mindful of that. So public service loan forgiveness only is with the direct loans program. So this goes back to, well, if I have SFEL loans or I have Stafford loans, those are usually the other two popular types of loans. I might have to consolidate to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. I must work full-time, and full-time is classified as 30 hours for this particular program. And I must make 120 payments. The key word here is on time. So if you, let's say, you know what, I just didn't get my payment in on time. On time is within 15 days of the due date. So if your payment is due on the 1st, within 15 days, it still counts as an on-time payment towards the 120 payments.
I have a question. What if you win the lottery and you make 120 separate payments in a month? Does that
No.
do it? Or
So
it has
you-
to be over time?
It has to be one payment within a 30-day cycle.
Okay.
I've had people say, I can make 3 payments this month. I'm sure you could, because you want to get that in through it.
Yeah.
No, it has to be.
Okay.
Yep. There's actually a lot of more parameters to it. Not too hard to understand,
10
but
years is nice.
yeah, but within 30-day cycles, on-time payments, no more than 15 days past the due date. Yep. And so income-driven repayment, and then they do allow you to do the 10-year standard repayment option as well with this program. Most people in this program will find themselves in an income-based repayment. So here's where it gets a little tricky. So if you're working in a public service field, like a nonprofit, you could essentially make a lot of money working for a nonprofit. That's true. Or, this is where it gets really, really tricky, if you're married. So student loans and being married, it's not fun. It's like, do I still date until this is done? I don't know. These are my thoughts. All right, sorry. No, it's like true story. My girlfriend called me. I never forget. After she got married, the next day, and I'm thinking something's wrong. Like, we've shipped you off. Go to your honeymoon. And I'm like, hello. I was like, is she regretting this? Like, I don't know. I had all these thoughts going through my head. She said, oh my God. She's like, why did you not tell me that I have to change my plan now? She was coming up on renewal. And she was in the repay plan. Repay plan is not friendly if you're married. You have to switch to an IBR, which means she has to go from 10% repayment to 15% and include his income. Does that make sense? So he's a state trooper. Oh, it doesn't make sense. How I explained it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
Why do they do that?
It's just how the plans are written. How the plans are written. And so you would have to switch to an IBR plan, 15% discretionary income, and now per your taxes, because it's every tax year they look at this, if you two are now doing married file jointly, then that has to be provided versus when it was just you. Okay, so that's a big deal because you might have had a cute little $200 payment, you were well with it, it never was on time, never late, and now your payment goes to $650 because now your husband is in the equation.
Right. Another income.
I don't know, 450 times 12, I'm still, dating looks good to me right now. I don't know. So it just depends. I get this call like every day, especially with millennials, because millennials are thinking about what? Home buying, marriage, these are the things. And I've sort of become like, and I don't want to be one, but it's like a couples counseling session that's always happening. And I'm going to start charging extra because I literally have people, millennials, this is funny, I'll do a sidebar, we'll sit together, and she's like, okay, you can show him my loans. I'm like, so he doesn't know, so you came here to do that. Oh, okay. So, and then I'll show, because usually women have more student loan debt than men, that's statistics, and well, I mean, the statistic a lot of people don't share is that more women have more degrees than men, and so.
52%.
Wow.
And especially I work in Philadelphia, so a lot of the women that I meet with have 6-figure debt. And they might have their masters, their doctors, and so forth, or have good paying jobs, the 6 figures. And so I'm showing Bob. Bob has 10,000. You have 150. I'm like, so you gonna put that on me to do? You know? So I have a fun day at work every day. So I'm like, okay, and I'm looking at him, he wants to hit a panic button. Anyway, and I hope they get married. So the point is, because this could go, no, really could go a couple ways. You gotta talk about it. I'm like, what does the drive home look like? What do you pay for that? I don't know. So I do see a lot of couples that will come to me. I'm just used to it now, but when I first started this, I was like, I don't know what I think I signed up for. Because people want me to break the ice to them. So anyway, if you know some millennials, someone that's getting married, I do ask and advise them to have the conversation with their partner about their student loans. before marriage. After marriage is really bad. I've had that scenario too, and his face was just, I don't know what he was thinking. So, but public service loan forgiveness, let's get back to this. This is important. You can be eligible for this if you work for a nonprofit, if you work in healthcare that's not for profit, if you work in education, the Title I school particularly. So there's a whole list of organizations and type of jobs online that could really fit into this model if you're going to be eligible. But you would send off the form. There's an application you have to send off. They have to send you back a letter saying you've been approved. Your loans, if you're not already with what's called Fed loans, that's a lender, Fed loans, your loans are going to be moved to Fed loans. So let's say you had NIBAN before, now you're going to be moved to Fed loans. The thought is, and we have to see, this is really one of the programs that the new administration wants to stop. They want to cut this program off. And that would make a lot of people mad. So what I'm thinking is going to happen, just because I can see how they're moving people all to Fed loans, is that they're going to keep people grandfathered most likely, those that are enrolled, and then those that are coming in may not have the opportunity. Again, if you get a new president, then it can be cut back on. So these things, I'm here for the ride, I don't know. So I've just been explaining to people, if you work in the right organization, get enrolled, get at least signed up. And the question I get is, well, what if I'm not ready to pay my loans? Make a payment. They got to make one payment to count, to be in the program. And if you stop after that, that's your business. But at least you're signed up for it. Because then if you move to different nonprofits or different spaces, at least then you'll be eligible to have those payments accumulating. So at the end of 120, you could be done.
Sonia, I think that's worth repeating. Can you repeat that one more time?
Which part? Go back to sign up.
Fed loans.
So they're moving everyone to Fed loans. So the thought would be, if you at least could sign up for the program, if you work for an eligible employer, sign up. You do have to make at least a payment to be enrolled. Make your payment, and if you have to stop, that's between you and your budget, but that's okay. But at least you're enrolled. So then if you decide to start repaying again under the qualified repayment plan of an income-driven repayment plan or a standard, at least those payments will start to accumulate to the 120. When you hit 120, when you get to that mark, now this is the part here, you do need to send in another application that says, can you review my loans to see if I have completed my 120 payments. FedLoan is actually really good on their website about showing the payments, the numbers that are accumulating, so it makes it easier for you now. But you have to send the application in, they do a review, and then you'll get a letter that says, congratulations, you're paid off. That's a good day.
Is that letter going to Fed loans? Is that a third party or is that a government company?
So Fed loans is a lender, but the government authorizes to service your loans.
Okay.
Yep.
So who's approving that letter?
Fed loans. So Fed loans manages that program.
Okay.
So every lender has different type of programs that they manage. So if you were in bankruptcy, your loans will go to Mohia. If you were, what's the other one? If you were going to try to get your loans forgiven because of disability, I believe the lender for that is Great Lakes. So there are particular lenders that house particular programs. So it's not uncommon that if you were applying for these programs, you could be moved to a lender, a different lender. Yeah, good question. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So teacher loan forgiveness. So I meet with a lot of teachers and nurses. That's like our core audience for people who work with us. Teacher loan forgiveness, very similar, and nurses are not on here, but I'll go through it. Teaching at least 5 consecutive years as a teacher, teaching full-time, low-income elementary. And there's actually a website if you're not sure if your school will qualify for that. I can help point you there. But it just has to be a Title I school. And so the challenge with this is that you want to make sure that you can get a record of your teaching history. Like, let's say you start 2 years at one school and then 3 years at another. You would have to get the paperwork completed at both places by the principal most likely, and then submit the information over. So the way teacher loan forgiveness works is that it's actually taking money off of the top of what you owe. So it's not like the public service where it's an expanded period. 5 to 17,500, depending on the type of teacher and the discipline you teach. So special education, mathematics, science, usually on the higher end of the spectrum of how much they'll take off of your loans. Does that make sense?
So they just take it off?
So it's kind of like a grant that will be applied. Yep, a 5 up to 17,000. So that's a good incentive for someone that's a teacher that a lot of people don't know about. So we actually do a lot of professional development, especially in the city of Philadelphia, around this because they're working there. Everyone should be taking advantage of this, if nothing else. Now, the challenge is if you take advantage of this, let's say you wanted to use those first 5 years of being an educator and they took $17,000 off, right? Then the public service would begin for any years after that 5th year. So you don't get the benefits of both. If you're going to take the money, then you have to wait and start your 10-year mark at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I was wondering if you could put those two together.
You could, but it just has to start right after.
Okay.
Or you might just say, you know what, I'm 5 years in and I'm already accumulating to public service. I may not even touch teacher.
Because at the end of the 10 years, the rest, whatever's left is forgiven, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then let's say you're going to change fields, or you're going to work for a school that wouldn't be eligible.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very different for everyone based on your career. Mm-hmm. So let's keep going. Okay. So this is really good. So federal agencies do have their own forgiveness programs. That's $10,000 annually, $16,000 a lifetime. A lot of federal employees actually don't know about this program, and depending if you work sometimes even on a state level, there are programs. That's why I always tell people, HR is your best friend. Find out what are you eligible for. I had a client who, her job, and I think it was a state rep. I'm sorry, I'm not too sure, but I think she worked for a state representative in Pennsylvania. They gave up to $500 a month for her student loan payment. So basically, like if you work here, we pay your student loan payment a month.
That's good.
It's awesome. Some judges are taking advantage of that. So again, if you're working in a federal or state entity for the government, there could be an additional perk or benefit that could be applied on top of public service loan forgiveness, if that makes sense.
They can be at the same time?
Again, they can be. So the difference is one, the depending. So it has to see how it's written. So like the state job is that's a perk of the job. So that's going to be separate. They probably would expect you to roll in both. So it just is going to depend on the actual job and the wording behind the benefit. Mm-hmm. The cancellation of Perkins loans. Okay. So if you do a consolidation, then you could risk waiving this because Perkins loans can be included in a consolidation. So Perkins loan is a federal loan, but it's given and authorized through your school. So like Douglas could have given Perkins loans to people, but Douglas is the holder of the loan. Does that make sense? So a lot of people get in a bit of trouble here because this loan could default and be collected on and through your paycheck just like another federal loan. It's just that the loan holder itself would be the institution you went to. Mm-hmm. So the cancellations for 100%, this one you're teaching at a school serving low-income families. Again, mathematics, science, foreign language, special education. Law enforcement is available, nursing in particular, we see a lot of that as well. And attorneys employed full-time in a federal community defender organization. So most people don't even look to get this done, and this is not, most people don't have a lot of Perkins loan debt. The most Perkins loan that I've seen might be like $10,000 because it's really to cover the gap at your semester that you had. So if you say, let's say you needed $1,500 more, then the school could authorize a Perkins loan to cover the gap. And some schools still do it, but a lot of schools have stopped doing it because it puts the institution at risk of, I might not get repaid. Does that make sense? So a lot of schools have stopped that. Yep. All right, so we went through this a little earlier, deferment. So if you are going back to school, again, unemployed with documentation, disability up to 3 years, so the deferment will only accrue in the unsubsidized loan. It's going to pay for that accruing interest on the subsidized loan. So that's the difference. So deferment forbearance, interest accrues on subsidized and unsubsidized loans when it comes to forbearance. Deferment is just on unsubsidized loans. And this one you can do up to 12 months at a time. But again, remember the general forbearance only a total of how many months?
36.
36. Yes, you guys are listening great. All right. I'm going to stop here, turn it back over to Maddie, and Maddie, call me back in if you need me.
Okay.
All right.
I told you she was the student loan doctor, didn't I? So the question is, now that we have all of this great information, how do we get organized? Which one do we pay off first? Typically what I'll say to people is, Student loans are different than having other types of loans in debt, but a lot of the same strategies apply across the board. So for instance, the first thing that you should do if you haven't done it already is to get a spreadsheet and put all of your loans on that spreadsheet. Just like I tell people when they are asking for discretionary income so that they can invest and do other things, the first question that I will ask them is, do you have a budget? And if the answer is yes, is it written down? Is it on a spreadsheet that can be updated monthly? I'm a financial advisor. I have a budget, okay? And my son will attend, every month I update my budget. Okay, so if I can do it, so can all of you. And that's what you should do with your loans. There's such a thing called snowball versus avalanche. What does that mean? Some people need a moral victory. So what I typically will recommend is start with the smaller loan first, pay that off, and start with the private loans, because the private loans are the ones that have the variable interest. Okay? And then celebrate that moral victory. Feel good about yourself. Right? Check. I got one checked off. We're women, we love checklists, right? Anybody with me with the check?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah?
You're in my ballpark.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also there are debt calculators. Sonia, you probably know more about that than I do. But if you need to use that, then use it. I mean, and the thing is, talk to your loan providers. It's amazing to me how people have credit cards and don't periodically just call and ask for a reduction in rates. Ask. What's the worst they can say? You might get a yes, right? So why not take advantage of that, for sure. Make an extra payment. This sometimes is a little tricky because if you make that extra payment, make sure that that payment is going towards your principal. Don't assume that that extra payment is going towards your principal, because a lot of lenders, what they'll do is they'll take your extra payment and they'll apply it to the interest first. So depending on what your goal is, communication is key with the lender.
And I was gonna say, even Fed loans and some of the other lenders are a little tricky. They have that, we have a program called Pay It Forward. No. What that means is if you were to pay extra, let's say you paid $100, your payment is only $50. That 100 would look like you were trying to pay for the next coming months ahead of time.
Right.
So it wouldn't even go to interest
Right.
or principal. It's,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, we want to help you.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, they're so crazy. So you have to write a letter that basically says, take me out of the Pay It Forward, because everyone's enrolled. So you have to find out what your lender has everyone enrolled into.
Yeah, that was on my next slide.
Mhm.
You beat me to it. So we can just, the other thing I'd say is, a lot of people think they don't have enough money to live. We all think we can make more money, for sure, right? But sometimes it's just a matter of looking at your finances. Where is that money going every month? And we're visual people. We are. So if we don't see it, then we probably won't pay attention to it. Refinancing private loans. Again, the private loans I believe you should address first, because those are the ones that have criteria that is built according to their individual contracts, right? The federal loans are more concrete. There's less availability for variable rates and things of that nature. So typically I would say to clients that have private loans is to try to pay those off first. So that's where we start when we're developing a plan.
In
Sure.
the previous slide, there was a bullet point that you didn't speak about.
Did
Do
I
not
miss one?
advance the due date. What does that mean?
That's what Sonia's talking
Oh, okay.
about.
All right.
So if you advance that due date, make sure that, you know, it's not gonna be recorded as you not making that payment, right? So that's what that means.
Is, when you say private loan, does that also include your mortgage?
Well, here specifically, we're talking about the private student loans.
Okay.
Yeah, so that,
Well, on the next slide though.
okay,
Whoops, sorry.
this one? Go back.
Yeah.
One more? Did you see something about mortgages?
It's one, you already covered this, so
Uh-huh.
go on to the
Next.
next.
We didn't fix that one.
No, we didn't do that one yet, go back.
One.
Okay, so pay less by reducing overall interest. So I was just wondering if you had a home or an RV or something like that that you lived in, you know, a mobile home, whatever, and you had a mortgage on that. Are we talking about that kind of loan as well, and then your student loan in addition to that?
But what we're talking about here is when people graduate from undergrad or grad and they want to refinance with a private loan,
Mm-hmm.
they have to have an established credit score.
Sure, right.
You know, because otherwise the lenders, just like with other debt, they're going to give you a higher interest rates. So these bullet points pertain to the requirements that are necessary to ensure that you're going to get a decent interest rate on a private loan, if you want to go that route,
And that
as far as
could be-
repayment.
That could be dependent on your credit score.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that good? Okay. We can keep
Thank
going.
you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Absolutely. Great question. There is a possibility for student loan deductions. I am not a CPA, so I'm not even going to go there, but I just wanted to show you this slide. When you do get your taxes done, ask your accountant.
Here for next year.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, this is a sad situation for me because I've had experiences with clients where someone has passed away and the outstanding loans that they have for themselves or their children become part of the estate. Very sad. The federal loans are usually forgiven, so that's not the case in most federal loans. But private loans, if someone passes away and they had $100,000 worth of student loan debt, guess what? They're coming after you. Absolutely. So part of the strategy that I use when I'm working with my clients is to put a life insurance policy in place that's designated for that specific reason. So I had a client who had she's a doctor now, she had $350,000 worth of student loans. It's a hefty number. And she was doing well, she's still doing well. But I sat her down and I said, look, I know you're doing well now, but heaven forbid, and they were all private. If something happens to you, do you want it? Because she was single. And I said, do you want your mom, it was just the two of them, to get saddled with this debt? Because she, you know, her mother was the beneficiary. So what we did is we initiated a life insurance policy specifically for that purpose. And what we did is we backed it into the amount of years that it was going to take her to pay off that loan. It's a very cost-effective way of ensuring that you don't leave that burden behind if, heaven forbid, something happens. And it's the same thing with the parent loans. If I take a loan for my son, and God forbid something happens to me and it's a private loan, it's got to be paid. Right? Yeah. Next slide. So that's what I have, and that's what, so does anybody have any questions for either Sonia or myself at this time? No?
Is New Jersey class loan considered a private loan or a, okay.
So the New Jersey class loans, they can transition to mimic more like a private loan. And I'm gonna be really honest with you, I'm still trying to get clarity on them myself because they don't operate under the federal policies. So they're a state loan, but they are a state loan that can act like a private loan. And literally, I have a lot of clients from New Jersey, and if there was any loan more than a regular private loan that could cause the most havoc is the New Jersey state loan. So I would say if you have those, that is a big priority first. If I had to put them in pecking order, private and federal. So and that's just because the terms can change in them very easily. And then even the flexibility for them after a certain point can be null and void too. Not trying to scare you, but that is the one loan that we see a lot from New Jersey clients that they have the most trouble with because it can really imitate like a private loan. So it's not a federal, it's a state, but it's also not statutory private, but it imitates like a private. Does that make sense? It's a little confusing, but it's a little tough. And a lot of clients do have them from New Jersey.
I know they look like government loans. I don't have them, but I saw them in my FAFSA
Mhm.
applications.
Mhm.
They look like
Oh
government
no,
loans.
I know you, yeah. But they are not
No,
in terms
I
of
know that.
like the flexibility of them. Mhm.
Egypt has a question.
So this is a multi-part question
Mhm.
for, like currently like high school. Like I have a younger sister that's in high school.
Mhm.
So you know how after you graduate from college, you have a grace period.
Mhm.
When you have your subsidized and your unsubsidized loans, I think they can be 6 months.
6 months.
And after that 6 months, my question is particularly about your credit score.
Mhm.
What is the best method or like the best process that someone that recently graduated should go through when it comes to whether using your forbearance if you're not able to pay or your grace period? What is the best way to protect your credit score if you're not able to start making payments like immediately? Like what is it about?
So the first thing is a lot of times people associate I can't pay, I can't afford to forbearance. That actually might be the time where you need to look at the IBR payment. So if you make under a certain amount, you know what I can live off, what I can't live off, or whatever it looks like. You need to let them know that. So doing the income-based application would be step one. You may qualify for a $0 a month payment, and you would not have to use your forbearance or deferment. A lot of people skip that because I just can't pay. If you truly are not making a lot of money, this is now the time to say so and report that and show that documentation so that you can get a $0 payment and not have to burn through your forbearance months. Then if you couldn't, then you could go for forbearance. But try that first. Now, if it's just like, well, I make 40, but my living expenses are too high, it's a different conversation, then it's a forbearance. But a lot of times people are like, well, I only make 20,000, perfect. Then that's a $0 payment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
From the lender approves that for you?
So you would go through the studentloans.gov website here, and you would do the income-based repayment application. Mm-hmm. And you're plugging in your numbers. They're using information from your taxes. If you did not file taxes, they're using information from your pay stub that you would have to send in. Mm-hmm.
So that means then you could later on use your deferment if you needed to.
Right, because you might
and you still have
qualify.
forbearance.
Save it.
And let's say you work for a nonprofit at that. So let's say you're working at a nonprofit, you're not making a lot of money, but you really want to work here and get some experience. So you can also be in the public service forgiveness program. Those $0 payments count towards the public service loan forgiveness.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if you've been ignoring your student loan
Mm-hmm.
completely?
Yep.
And now they're looking for you to start paying, or what do you do with that?
So, well, we help, I would say, about 500 people a month, and about 90% have been ignored. So you're not alone. So what happens is, and I tell people, most people start repayment where there's something on the other end. One, they're about to maybe go into your check. That could happen. You get that letter. Two, they took your taxes. This is tax season, so we're wildly popular because people got a letter instead of a check. And then three, that happens. I know. Those phone calls are not so nice, so we remind people we are not Sally Mae. That's okay. We're a really nice team. But that happens. People get upset and they call. So you get the letter, or you get the notification, or you want to buy a home. So you cannot buy a home unless your loans are now in repayment. And so it used to be that if you weren't in repayment for at least 12 months, never would even factor to buy a home. Just skip over it. But now you have to be in repayment, and you have to be in a repayment above $0. So even if you're in $0 repayment, still won't qualify. So all that to say, depending on how much you owe, how far along you are, let's say you are behind. Let's say you never even submitted a forbearance application, and you are in default or about to go into default. The nice thing is, depending on where you meet at the corner, that can be reversed with a back forbearance, which we help with. Or you could do it, the lender, this is where it gets tricky. When you call your lender and you tell them what you want them to do, sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. So let's say someone was late for 5 months. Well, you can do a back forbearance for those 5 months because I had hardship these last 5 months. But if you move forward and try to go around it or skip it, you can't go back and clean that up on your credit. But if you apply a back forbearance on your account, then it would come off of your credit because it was under forbearance. That's not something to report. So you just have to see where you're coming in at. How far along has it been since you've been in repayment? If you are at the status of right before being in default, then when you hit default, you can lose about 40 to 60 credit points at that point. Yes, you can still rehabilitate your loan. The way to do that if you go into default is that you have to go into an income-based repayment plan. Because the thought is, I have to get into this plan because I just couldn't afford the others. Even if the plan per month is more expensive than a standard plan, which just happens, you still have to go into an income-based repayment to reverse that default. If that all fell, there is what's called a default rehabilitation program. When you're in that program, most times they just want a $5 payment. No, we're not trying to pay more because we're excited about paying loans down. You just pay your $5 for 9 months. You stay on top of those 9 months because if let's say they didn't take it out on the first like they said they were supposed to, whose responsibility is that? Yours. You're like, wait, it was your program and you were supposed to take it. No, this is now with the collection agency. They would love for you to start the 9 months again. Because the longer they hold on to your loan, they get paid sometimes about a $6,000 collection fee. If you mess up on the program, 70% of people do, guess who gets to get paid that $6,000? They do. If you get through the program, the $6,000 fee comes off. Most people don't get through the program because, I'm not joking when I say this, around month 7, that $5 payment just magically, they don't want the $5, they want the $6,000. So the $5 payment never came out, but you didn't call and say anything. So now you're out the program. So these things happen because, again, no, the government's out to get you, but we're talking about collection agencies. We're not talking about your lender anymore. So you do have to be very on top of it if you're going through the rehabilitation process, if that's one of the things you might experience or know someone. You want to, okay, they said it was on the 1st, oh, it's 3 o'clock, I didn't see it come out. You want to call them before the day is over. Hey, just wanted to remind you, on my account, they tried to do with one of my clients, they tried to take it out her savings. It's not her savings, it's in her checking. Oh, that was an error. Oh, I'm sure it was. So you have to be very engaged in it. I don't know if you have to set reminders once a month, but going through that process can be a little tricky. But you can come out of it. Like, it's just depending on what you're dealing with.
Oh, it's my son, basically,
Okay.
because he's ignored this. He graduated in 2011. He's been ignoring everything. And they just called him about the $5, and he told me this on the porch when I was coming here, and I told him I was coming here.
Very timely.
Yeah, he says, the guy called me and he told me about a $5 payment, and I said, oh, $5? I was like, that's nothing. He said, but I don't know if I should go into that because they're pretty, I don't know what he was talking about, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so the $5 payment, you're only allowed to go through it once. So if you mess it up, that's it. Even if years later you need it again, it's not available. You have one time to go through the program. The second time to clean up your stuff would be maybe through a consolidation that could work. The third time you're stuck. So literally what's the saddest thing, and we don't have many people in this position, but the saddest thing is to see someone burn through all of the other options. Now they have $200,000 and a permanent default. That means you're not getting a house until $200,000 is paid off.
Wow.
There's no way around it. I'm not even a miracle worker at that
Valerie,
point.
you have a question for
Yeah.
Sonia?
So, Doc, you can tell that people are on life support.
Mm-hmm.
They need help. How do you actually help them? Do you have people come to you and you take on clients to go through all of this?
Yeah.
Because this is messy, but you gave good information. So somebody would contact you, they become a client, you help them to navigate through all of this, and you actually either direct them or you take action yourself with some of all of this? Because this information is not out there. People do not know about this.
So most of the websites, most of the information is on studentloans.gov. The problem, the difference as to why someone might work with us is because you're emotionally tied to this. You're over it, you're irritated, and you didn't read it, or you skipped sentences. You're over it. So someone's working with us. So I represent as the brand, but I have 6 coaches that do the work. So you're coming by way of a free call. That's for her to say, or her son to say, this is what's happening. we know what's happening, then we would say we can help. That's a consultation. That's where we sit virtual classroom or in person, and we sit for 30 minutes and review your loans with you. At that point, you might say, okay, got it, I can take it from here, and then that's fine. Or you might say, you know what, I'm going to pay you to do and talk on my lender on my behalf, or because some people just don't want to touch it. And then we do the work for that person on their behalf. If it's forgiveness, if it's the work, whatever it is. If we can't help them, we will refer you to the right person. And sometimes, and it doesn't have to go this far, but sometimes, like especially when it comes to those private loans, you sometimes might need a student loan lawyer. You have to be careful when it comes to them because you can wind up paying them a month where you would have paid the company a month. So you be careful when it comes to that. The nice thing is Pennsylvania and Texas, I say this because you're not far, so we'd love to have you move over. But Pennsylvania and Texas are the only two states where they are not allowed to garnish your wages if you have a private loan. That's the only two. So I tell people, come on over, we love to have you. And the reason why I say that is because those states have very protective laws as it comes to debt. Now that is important because if you know, the federal part we might can get cleaned up and get on top of. But that private debt, if you have 80,000, 90,000, they're not with as many repayment options or as flexible. We want 800. We want 800 today. So then that game goes on for a few months, and then they can petition the court to go right into your wages at 25% of paycheck. So now I literally had a client that worked in Camden. You know how close Camden is to Philadelphia. Worked in Philadelphia. So now it's time for you to move to Philadelphia and come on over.
Yep.
Because she literally, you know, she lost her apartment, and then it's going to go to Carver's next. Because that's 25% that. Where's that coming from? So you just have to figure out. So a lot of people are not in that dire of a situation, but it could get there, escalate very quickly. It used to be years that someone could be not repaying and nothing would happen. I mean, we all heard those stories. But the other thing with the Obama administration is things like when they increased the Pell Grant, that came as a result of high collection activities on defaulted loans. That money didn't come out the sky. So, so there were different things that took place. So the administration said, well, I saw some things like, oh, you started collecting on people. So then now there's an actual system and a standard in place. When you get to 6 months, now you're teetering into default, which happens at 9. But the 6-month mark is when it really starts to impact your credit. But when you hit 9 months, okay, now we can take your taxes first. Then we're going to go into your paycheck. So a whole system starts at that point. So anyway, I say all that to say that's probably not anyone's exact situation here, but it could go that way if you think you'll ignore it. Those days are like long gone. And back to Maddie's point, it shows up when you're home buying. It shows up with, so I had my friend, I was at an event with him. He's 28, or was 28, I should say. He passed away in sleep. His mom called me 2 weeks later after service, and she said, you know I can do something on his federal. She said, but what are we going to do about his private? And I said, I hate to ask this, but did he have life insurance? She said, we had a little policy. I said, well, that little policy has to go directly to his loans. And this is because he left behind a home. Now, see, if he had left without a home or property, okay, well, then they can't collect on anything. They can't come after the family. But he had an estate, which had a home. So they could have put a lien on the home, so she had to direct the policy money to the private loan. So when Maddie says, so if you have an $80,000 private loan, then you need an $80,000 policy with Maddie, you know, because that has to all match up. Now, maybe it's a term, because then it'll be over, depending, just depending that policy around for because of that private debt, which is really important too. So it's just about like the extra precautions, and if anyone is a parent or like knows someone that's going to college, the one thing I say about private loan debt is that it really is the one debt, it's the bane of my existence. It's really the one debt that doesn't have to occur. And a lot of times we see private debt as a reflection of this is the school I wanted to go to. Not the school you should have went to. So that's a conversation for another day, but I call it the sticky middle.
I have parents get very upset with me when they say,
oh yeah,
send my child to Harvard. I'm going to take $200,000 out of my retirement. And I say, you know what? You need to send that young man or that young lady to a junior college for 2 years. And then maybe if you want to transfer, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If you can't afford it, you should not be sending your children to institutions that the family cannot afford. Go to a state school. Go to a junior college. They are some of the finest, with this one included, institutions in this country. So why are you trying to send these young people to Ivy League schools? And they get very upset with me, but it's my duty to tell the truth and let them know where they're going, because that retirement nest egg was put in place for you, not your children. Okay? So, yeah, for sure. I think that's good advice coming from
I'll tell you, I pass my card around. On my card has my social media handles. We do a lot of webinars. So on May 15th, we have a free webinar, student loans and the credit score. Like 2 weeks ago, we did student loans and home buying. We'll be doing some more around life insurance and student loans. So I would say use this as a resource to learn, and definitely share us, because I think the goal of our mission, this was just the best little accidental business I started that became not so accidental, was just because when I went to go through my own process of repayment, my background is higher ed, been higher ed for over 8 years and finishing on my doctorate, I had questions about my loans. And it took me 5 representatives to get an answer. So because I knew what questions to ask, it really came to me, I said, oh my God, well, what about the person who, 1, is scared, and 2, just doesn't know what to ask? And then it started from there. So thank you guys for having me. I'm going to pass this around. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This has been really informative, but now I need you to do something. I need you to tell your friends who may have college loans about this program. And I need you to start talking about Smart Talks, because Smart Talks is all about you. It's about the information you think that you need to hear in order to make your life better. We have surveys here that I do need you to fill out. I do need you to spend the time to do this, because it is very important. Let us know if we need to repeat this seminar, or if we need to take it to a 102 level and see who else we need to bring in. But I especially want to thank Maddie Brooks, as always, for being here. And it was indeed Maddie who introduced us to Sonia Lewis. Sonia, I'm glad you brought cards, because we really appreciate what the 2 of you were able to do in terms of marrying this program together. And now we have, thank you for coming. Yes.